So nothing can be taken for granted anymore. All the things that we have been used to, the constitution, parliamentary democracy, the institutions playing their role. So nothing can be taken for granted anymore. We have to fight for everything. The fascists, we call it a fascist phase now.
Yeah.
So these are the people who were basically completely against the freedom movement during the time of freedom movement. So all the ideological political streams who had fought for freedom in different ways are stakeholders of modern India. The fascists, we call it a fascist phase now.
Yeah.
So these are the people who were basically completely against the freedom movement during the time of freedom movement. So all the ideological political streams who had fought for freedom in different ways are stakeholders of modern India. Read Charu Mazumdar just before his death, 72. He was eliminated in 1972 by the state eventually. So he talks about larger unity, because that was the beginning of what eventually culminated in the emergency in the 1970s. There have been periods when they were banned. They had to pretend that we are a cultural organization, we will accept the constitution, everything. But the moment they got any power, any slice of power, let's say 1977, the Morarji Desai government, when they had the Information Broadcasting Ministry and Foreign Affairs Ministry with them. So they started using that power. If you kill anybody and then say that he was a Maoist of this level or that level, you put some arms behind him, these weapons were seized from him. So this is basically a license to kill. There is also an incentive to kill. So anti-caste struggle, exactly, we call it anti-feudal struggle.
Right.
So caste is not just something scriptural. It is not just about some ritual and all something. It is not just some kind of a religious, exploitation or exclusion of people. It is backed by land relations. I think there is a gap. The way we perceive this threat and the way we are fighting this threat and the way the CPM looks at the whole thing. So there is definitely a lot of difference.
Welcome to Indie Journal in Focus. In a range of political interviews, this is another episode that we are getting before you. You hear from a lot of political parties which call themselves the mainstream, but we rarely get to interact with other political organizations, parties, which have different perspective, different approaches to India's politics. One of the parties being the CPIML, Liberation. The CPIML Liberation is one of the major communist parties in the constitutional communist parties in India, and it is a major force, especially in the northern parts of India, especially in Bihar, where it has recently won 11 seats in the Bihar Assembly. So, being such a major outfit, it is not covered that much in mainstream media. Today, we get the opportunity to interact with the General Secretary of CPIML, Shri Dipankar Bhattacharya. Today we are going to cover what the politics of CPIML is and what the current analysis of the current situation is. Welcome to Indie Journal, sir.
Thank you.
So let's start with something that you are here in Maharashtra today for the merger of Lal Nishan party with CPIML. So how did this merger come to be? Because when it comes to the left parties, we always hear about splits,
right,
and never a merger. So what is the history behind this, and how did this come to be?
Right. So I think there are two kind of backgrounds to it. One is the longer term kind of background. So Lal Nishan party, as you know, is part of the Indian Communist movement and dates back to 1942. So the communist movement has had some major, let's say, some debates internally. There have been a few major mistakes committed by the movement. So after 1942, when the Communist Party adopted a different line, not supporting the Quit India movement. In fact, so I think because the movement started from Maharashtra itself, to the section of communists who thought that the Communist Party's official policy line was actually wrong, mistaken, and wanted a different kind of approach. So that is the beginning of the Lal Nishan Party.
Right.
And we came in touch. Our party was formed in 1969 as a product of the Naxalbari peasant upsurge. That was in 1967. So we were formed as a political party in 1969. Our two parties have been in a very close touch since 1990. Since 1990. And we have been working together on different fronts, on trade union, almost always together. But now, I think after 2014, all of us, we realize, especially in the left, that we have now reached a phase which is completely unprecedented. So nothing can be taken for granted anymore. All the things that we have been used to, the constitution, parliamentary democracy, the institutions playing their role. So nothing can be taken for granted anymore. We have to fight for everything. If you want to keep India together, if you want to keep democracy going, if you want rule of law, if you want to secure whatever was promised in the constitution, the larger goal for the republic, each of those epithets, sovereign, democratic, secular, socialist, everything, and each of the rights which have been promised to the citizens were the micro unit of the republic. Justice, social, economic, and political, liberty, fraternity, everything has to be fought for. So this is, I think, has basically brought us even closer. This is, okay, history is there, but this is a different phase altogether.
Right.
And the onus is, of course, communists alone cannot save India. We are one of the political currents of modern India. There are many other ideological political streams which are all together during the freedom movement. And especially it so happens that the fascists, we call it a fascist phase now. So these are the people who were basically completely against the freedom movement during the time of freedom movement. So all the ideological political streams who had fought for freedom in different ways are stakeholders of modern India. I think we need to come together. So that we need to come together on different levels. One is a coming together of different ideological streams, communists, socialists, Ambedkarites, Gandhians, all of us need to come together and put our act together. And of course the left, where there is greater ideological political convergence, a greater commonality, we need to come together. So that's the thinking, I think. Now in Maharashtra, I look at it as the coming together of not just two organizations, coming together of two great legacies of the communist movement. So this is, of course, Lal Nishan is Maharashtra specific. CPIML has never really had much strong presence in Maharashtra, but as you said, I mean, started from Bengal, but then we had a major setback in Bengal soon after the party was found. But then in Bihar, it had a second lease of kind of life, and it has struck deep roots there. So I think it brings together two major legacies of the communist movement at a time when probably it is needed most to fight fascism, to save the very vision of modern India. So that's how it worked.
Okay. You mentioned right now there is a larger need for unity, but when we see the evolution of the approach of especially a organization like CPIML, how has the approach towards parliamentary politics changed over the years? Like, since it was born out of an uprising,
Right.
Though righteous, but we see it taking a certain direction later on. So how has that perspective evolved?
No, I think, see, I mean, when Naxalbari happened in 1967, then we were all part of the CPIM. Right? And the CPIM had actually come to power then in West Bengal as part of a united front government. So to begin with, there was nothing like boycott of elections as a strategy or any such thing.
Okay.
Comrade Charu Mazumdar, our founder, general secretary, he had contested a by-election from Siliguri in probably 1962, 63, that period, and he had polled some very meager vote, 4,000, because that was again, like you have this kind of jingoistic atmosphere now. So that was again some kind of hyper-nationalistic kind of environment. Yet you got some 4,000 votes talking about the landless poor, talking about agrarian revolution. And he was very happy that we got some 4,000 votes. So it is the party, when it emerged, it so happened that then the idea was that revolution is round the corner. And so as a temporary thing, so they thought that fighting elections is a part of a longer strategy. So now we have other things to do. So mobilizing people, the rural poor, the agrarian, landless laborers, in a direct struggle for political power. That was considered to be the need of the hour. So that's why the whole election thing took a backseat. But again, if you read Charu Mazumdar just before his death, 72, he was kind of eliminated in 1972 by the state eventually. So he talks about larger unity, because that was the beginning of what eventually culminated in the emergency in the 1970s. So he then emphasized the need for a larger left unity, larger political unity. So we too, as a party, initially were not contesting elections. By mid-80s, we realized that boycotting an election is easy to do. So the thing is, the important thing for Marxists is to reach the people and to see that the people, what kind of lessons they gain out of it. So we realize that in a state like Bihar, where the landless poor, the Dalits, are effectively disenfranchised. So they don't really have a right to vote. So if you say we are boycotting election, so you are giving it a glorified name. So they actually don't really have any right there in the electoral arena. So we thought maybe we should start contesting election and making the right to vote our point of departure. So that's how it started. When we entered the election with a whole lot of people who were not actually allowed to vote. So they realized, they took it as their struggle, that the struggle that we wage, let's say, for land, for dignity, for wages. So if we want to amplify our own voice and raise it in the political arena, nobody else is going to do it on our behalf. So we have to do it ourselves. So we have to raise our voice where we are never heard. We have to be seen where we have never been seen, where we have been rendered completely invisible. So that's how it all started. And in fact, our experience is that boycotting election was more peaceful. Nobody was actually bothered. Right? Some people are not voting. Read Charu Mazumdar just before his death, 72. He was kind of eliminated in 1972 by the state eventually. So he talks about larger unity, because that was the beginning of what eventually culminated in the emergency in the 1970s, the Lok Sabha election. And in fact, we consider it a very inspiring moment for us, very rewarding moment. In the first election we contested, we won a Lok Sabha seat from Bihar by polling something like 178,000 votes. And of those 178,000, probably nearly a lakh were people who were never before allowed to vote and who voted for the first time. And they had to pay a heavy price. After the election was over, on the polling day, in the evening, there was a massacre. Some 22 people were gunned down in a Bhojpur village called Danwar Beta, because the feudal forces, they couldn't stomach this. The rural poor, whose votes were always taken for granted after for grabs, now they are voting for themselves, for their own candidate. So that was a major thing. And in fact, many of the massacres that we will see in the subsequent years in Bihar, they were not really related to land. They are not just typical caste massacres. They are basically to stop this political advance of the movement, that these people, let them be out of the electoral arena. Let them not gather the strength to make a difference in the electoral arena. So when we started entering the electoral arena and making our presence felt,
Right.
raising the issues, they tried to stop us by all means, and violence was a major
Right.
feudal forces, the mafia gangs, and the state itself.
Right.
So this was, we think, we had to confront more violence in electoral participation than while we were
Than with
boycotting elections.
Right. So while we are speaking of the current situation, something like the India Alliance comes up, and a lot of all the left parties are part of the India Alliance as well, or were. We don't know the status of the India Alliance because as of now.
Right.
So how did you approach this situation, like something of a broader opposition unity?
As I say, I mean, after 2014, so we realized that this is a completely different situation now. As I use the word fascism not in a light way, we started using it in a very considered way. That here are, because RSS is a fascist organization. Anybody who knows the RSS history, there can be no doubt about it. Its ideology is completely fascist.
Right.
Its vision of India is completely fascist. And that vision can only be achieved by complete negation of democracy. So only thing which was lacking earlier was power. The ideology was there, the vision was there, the design was there, the whole game plan was there, but power was lacking.
Right.
So that's why they were sort of lying low. There have been periods when they were banned. They had to pretend that we are a cultural organization, we'll accept the constitution, everything. But the moment they got any power, any slice of power, let's say 1977, the Morarji Desai government, when they had the Information Broadcasting Ministry and Foreign Affairs Ministry with them. So they started using that power. So they started using political power to the hilt to advance their ideology, their vision. So now in 2014, it was not even the Vajpayee era government. That was NDA where they were dependent. This is a Modi government, replication of a Gujarat model on an all India plan. So we realized that what is in store now. So we wrote to all left parties first that this is the time, whatever differences we have had in the past, maybe, for example, in West Bengal, the CPM was in power for 34 years. There have been many issues where we could not actually agree.
Right.
So we functioned as an independent left organization.
Right.
So there have been differences. But we thought this is the time when the differences can take a backseat. The need is for coordinated action. So first we started with left unity.
Right.
And we got some response. But then we realized that even just the left alone can't really do it.
Right.
So for example, in a state like Bihar, so where the BJP was already, actually many people don't look at it that way. They think Nitish Kumar. But who is Nitish Kumar?
Right.
BJP is basically using him.
Right.
Like they use the word mask for, even Vajpayee.
Yeah.
So here they have got a convenient mask for their own politics.
Right.
So we realize that we need to come together on a larger scale. And which means, for example, the RJD.
Right.
Till 2005, we had RJD government. And once again, we were in the opposition. We had to pay a heavy price. Our people were killed. Our leaders were killed. There were a series of massacres inflicted on our base.
Yeah.
RJD was in power.
Right.
So we have been fighting as an independent opposition party. Right. But here is a bigger enemy, a bigger kind of feudal restoration and communal violence. Right. So we reached out to all these parties. So by 2020, when the assembly elections were happening in Bihar, I think the RJD too realized that we need a larger thing. So that's how it all started. So 2020, we had a coalition, RJD, Congress, and CPI, CPIML, 5 parties. And it worked. And it worked because people realized, initially people thought, how can this kind of coalition happen? It cannot become viable because there is so much of background history and all that. But then people realize, because people are not prisoners of history. We live in the present. We are looking at the future. So history is there as a good reference point. You have to learn from history.
Right.
So when it worked, so I think that, and then subsequently, it's a Karnataka election and all that, that gave us the impetus that something like this can happen on a larger scale, nationally, countrywide. That's how this whole India alliance came about.
Right.
And so we look at it, as I said, we don't look at it as just some kind of an electoral kind of an arrangement. It is an electoral arrangement, fine, but it has to have a deeper resonance.
Right.
So for us, the deeper resonance is, look, go back to the freedom movement. All the ideological political streams who fought for freedom and who can legitimately claim that we want freedom for India, all of us who made this kind of a constitution possible, because the constitution itself, it is not the ideal constitution which Baba Sahib Ambedkar actually wanted to write, which is the states and minorities,
Right.
but the kind of constitution which is a blueprint for modern India. And it is so striking to think about it today. It was actually written after partition. It was actually written after such a communal bloodbath had taken place,
Right.
and which is nothing. I mean, we think that today we are in the middle of so much of communal hate and all, but the kind of hate, the kind of violence was there in between 1947 and 48. That was something different. Yet that constitution was the natural constitution then, and that because of the freedom movement. So all of us, the freedom movement constituents, the ideologies, we need to come together. So we look at India as that kind of an ideological cooperation, common platform for all these parties. And of course, then the parties which have come up, let's say there are national parties, there are regional parties, there are, so to say, social justice parties. There are, of course, the left, different shades of left. So you can also look at it that way. The political streams of modern India together.
Yeah. So you spoke of pluralism basically you spoke of pluralism, but when there is a critique or let's say a mainstream critique of the left, there a lot of times the horseshoe theory is used, that just like the right doesn't like diversity, the left too wants some kind of uniformity. So do you think that criticism is fair, or how do you explain that in context of something like India, which is so diverse?
I don't really know. I mean, in fact, this criticism I'm hearing for the first time.
Oh,
Okay, the left has some kind of a force for uniformity.
okay,
Because if you look at the development of left,
right,
it's rooted in diversity. If you look at, for example, the freedom movement itself was a very diverse thing, right? And in fact, we look at it this way, that the freedom movement should not be seen in a very mechanical, limited, instrumental kind of way.
right,
So at the time of freedom movement, there are two questions facing us. One is India has to win freedom. So how to win freedom?
right,
So different modes. Some people chose some method, some people chose some another method. So, and that's how they embraced the gallows. They spent years and decades in jails.
right,
So that is one way of looking at the freedom movement. But then, and if you apply this yardstick, people will find it difficult to accept Ambedkar as a freedom movement, a freedom fighter, right? But we look at him as also a great freedom fighter, because they were visualizing what free India should be like,
right,
what the society in free India should be like.
right.
So people who are working on both planes, and in fact the communists were working on both planes, how to win freedom, how to achieve freedom, and how to build free India, how to visualize it. And that's how you'll find, for example, Telangana. What are the Telangana people doing? They were fighting against the Nizam then.
Right.
In many places, this Kerala whole left, Travancore.
Right.
So many places actually communists were fighting not just the British rule, they were also fighting all those so-called princely states.
Right.
So the composition of the freedom movement, the diversity, the issues, the kind of structures that you were fighting against. So I think the left appreciates this. Diversity is not a weak point of left, but diversity is, of course, a major enemy for the BJP.
Right.
Because if you read the bunch of thoughts, for them, India has to be like an empire. Modi has to be like an emperor. So there can be no diversity can be tolerated. So the bulldozer is actually comes in very handy for them. So bulldoze everything, flatten everything into one. That's why they always use the word uniformity. And we use the word unity. And there's a whole lot of difference between uniformity and unity. Yeah.
You spoke of jingoism during the, there was a huge possibility of jingoism after the partition. And there were some attempts, of course, to create that mindset and that approach to look at it as a communal issue and to imagine the nation as a part of religion or a religious state
as a Hindu nation.
As a Hindu nation. So now that we have seen almost 11, 12 years of the Modi government, and we see something like the Operation Sindoor and how it is portrayed in the. So, what is your analysis of this situation, and what other critical points do you see going on across the country?
See, I think if you talk about this whole Pahalgam terror attack, which triggered Operation Sindoor, let's say. So, first of all, this is a complete failure in terms of national security.
Right.
So, because the Modi government's major plank is that we make India strong, more secure, okay, law and order and all, perfect. So, it shows that there have been a complete failure in terms of delivering national security. First of all, demonetization was sought to be justified as an anti-terror measure, which broke the backbone of terror here. But that didn't happen. You had Uri, you had Pathankot, you had Pulwama. Then they try and justify 370, abrogation of 370, not just abrogation of 370, but Kashmir was reduced to 2 union territories, something unthinkable. We have seen Goa from a union territory getting promoted to statehood. We have seen Delhi fighting for statehood. But we have never really seen a state, a constitutional state, being demoted to 2 union territories. They try to justify it, saying that this will make Kashmir more secure. And yet, Pahalgam happens. And when Pahalgam actually happens, in a state like Kashmir, which is if you look in terms of, let's say, a number of military or paramilitary personnel per 1,000 people or per square kilometer, I'm sure Kashmir will be the most densely militarized state of India. Yet when Pahalgam happens, you have 2,000 tourists there, not a single policeman. Nothing. It's not that there is some security lapse. There is absolutely no security for them at all. So one is, this is a big failure of national security. And then Operation Sindoor, they tried to justify it, avenging this whole thing, securing justice for the people who have been the victims of Pahalgam terror attack. So let's look at it this way. So the Pahalgam terror attack, people, the survivors, Himanshi Narwal, what was she saying? She was saying, I want justice and peace. She never asked for a war. Okay? Justice and peace. Peace with justice, justice with peace. And she was heavily trolled because of this. So they said Operation Sindoor is okay. We are going to get justice for all. And then how it started, and after 4 days it stopped. Nobody knows how it started, who started it, and why it got stopped. And what is the achievement? You found that people who have been killed, Pahalgam terror attack, people who have been killed in this whole shelling, whatever took place, were like situation which developed over the 4 days. And even now it's continuing. It's continuing because Modi ji says this is just a pause. It's not really a ceasefire, so to say. So the people who are being killed in the border region in Poonch, they have been forgotten. Nobody talks about them. They are now talking about Operation Sindoor as some kind of a big political project, which is just to be harvested, for electoral purposes. So this is where, and you find that India stands completely isolated. You send all these 7 teams of Indian parliamentarians to so many countries. You should have sent them immediately after Pahalgam. They would have mobilized international opinion when India had all the sympathy. And you send them when you found that India already stands isolated. So this is a big failure of India's foreign policy too. Because Modi's biggest claim was he has enhanced the profile of India, stature of India, Vishwaguru. And everywhere we have a kind of first person kind of on terms with Obama or with Trump and all that. And now it turns out that nobody really cares for India. They care for Indian market, of course. India is such a big market. But nobody really cares for Indian foreign policy now. So this is a big failure. Pahalgam and Operation Sindoor, I think in a very concentrated way, they tell us that this government has been a big failure. in two areas where it had been claiming to be the strongest: national security and India's international stature.
Right. At the same time, there is another front of conflict going on in India, especially the central Indian regions. That is the anti-Naxalite operations that the government, it has opened up a new front altogether, and they have launched this mission 2026. So they have given a deadline that.
And Amit Shah keeps saying that we won't need that deadline.
Yeah.
We'll be achieving it even before.
How do you look at this conflict itself, like the way the government is approaching it right now and putting a deadline, and especially now after the general secretary of the Maoist party was killed?
See, there are, I think, people who have been following Bastar closely. Of course, there is a back history to it.
Right.
There have been Salwa Judum, there have been Operation Green Heart.
Right.
So this whole Operation Kagar didn't emerge in a vacuum.
Right.
So there has been some kind of a continuum
Right.
of violence. So two things have been very clear in this whole violence. And in fact, Salwa Judum was struck down by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court called it unconstitutional.
Right.
Because two things came up. One is that, okay, if there is a Maoist, okay, so upholding an ideology, subscribing to an ideology is no crime.
Right.
What you are actually doing, if somebody is actually engaged in some kind of war with the state, okay, that's a different thing altogether.
Right.
So the Supreme Court always made that distinction. So that you cannot have a blanket ideological witch hunt. That you can, imprison anybody, put anybody in prison and kill it. And in fact, Operation Kagar is not about implicating somebody. It's about killing people.
Right.
Let's be very clear about it. There is a surrender policy which says that alive or dead, you catch these people and you get this money. They have got all rewards on their heads.
Right.
So when you say alive or dead, obviously they will be caught dead. If you kill anybody and then say that he was a Maoist of this level or that level, you put some arms behind him, say that these weapons were seized from him. So this is basically a license to kill. There is also an incentive to kill. So Operation Kagar, basically that's what people have been saying, that in this area it is being conducted as some kind of a killing spree. So which is obviously very wrong. So the state killing its own citizens, this is complete extrajudicial extermination kind of campaign. Now there are two things. One is, of course, how to deal with the Maoists. Now here we found that the Maoists themselves said that we are ready to have unilateral ceasefire. They have in fact actually declared some kind of unilateral ceasefire.
Right.
So if the problem is with the armed struggle, and if they themselves are saying that now we want peaceful dialogue, I think the state should, because our job is to resolve the conflict.
Right.
So to resolve a conflict, if a peaceful method is available, why shouldn't you opt for the peaceful method, and why should you opt for war?
Right.
That's how the government has done with the Nagas, with a lot of other movements in the Northeast. So here we find that instead of adopting that approach, for example, I am told that Basava Raju, he was actually caught alive.
Right.
And then he was killed. If he was caught alive,
Okay.
then we had the judicial legal process to deal with it. Why it was not done? But more importantly, I think it is not just about Maoism. It is basically because everybody who talks about Adivasis, who talks about the Adivasis' aspirations, their grievances, they are being hounded out. You look at Himanshu Kumar, he is a Gandhian, professed Gandhian, everybody knows, and he has been banished from Bastar. You look at Manish Kunjam, he was a CPIML, not a no Maoist. His own family members have been killed apparently by Maoists in some kind of violence. So he has been Bela Bhatia,
right?
Scholars. Then Adivasi, what is that? Mulvasi Majh.
Right.
So they talk about. So this is basically fifth schedule, PESA. People want implementation of the constitution.
Right.
Bastar is also like Kashmir, heavily militarized.
Right.
Every few kilometers you have a camp. You have, apparently, I was looking at some figure, you have one military or paramilitary security personnel for every 8 civilians in Bastar. It's such that kind of a region.
Yeah.
And why this militarization? Because this militarization is because they want this whole area to be, corporate, object of corporate takeover. Look at Hasdeo forest. Look at all these whole mining areas in Bastar. And this is basically the militarization and corporate plunder, corporate takeover. They go hand in hand. And this whole Maoism and making India Maoist free by 26, this killing spree, this is being justified in this name. And it is really unfortunate. The kind of speech which Amit Shah gave, celebrating this.
Right.
In fact, you must have seen this. There are BJP handles on Twitter, X, BJP Karnataka.
Right.
They use that meme where Amit Shah is shown as holding a cauliflower.
Cauliflower, yeah.
And immediately, we're lucky that we have people who follow internet very closely.
Right.
They said this cauliflower is not like a harmless, previous kind of a vegetable. So this is this symbolizes genocide against Muslims.
Yeah.
This is anti-Muslim carnage from Bhagalpur days. So this kind of a thing they're using, that kind of symbolism. So this is violence. This is major state violence. So what the Maoists they are going to do, how they deal with this whole juncture, that is a different question altogether. Right. But I think this is about to crush the Adivasi movement, the Adivasis' aspiration for autonomy, and not just aspiration, whatever rights have already been there in the constitution. Right. Fifth schedule is a constitutional schedule. PESA is a constitutional act. So everything is being denied to them. Right. So we should look at it as some kind of an Adivasi movement rather than just some kind of a local Bastar conflict.
Right. Considering now that your party is a major force in Bihar, how do you look at Bihar? Because Bihar has had a long history of also social justice movements, but also caste violence. A lot of feudal violent incidents have happened in Bihar, and I think the left has been at the forefront of the anti-caste struggle in Bihar especially. So, what did the success of those Bihar assembly elections teach you? What did they say? And how was your experience you didn't participate in the government, of course, I think. You didn't take any portfolios, but you supported the government from outside. So, what was that experience like?
I'm glad that you said that the left has been in the forefront of anti-caste struggle, because very few people actually describe it that way. Because so when people talk about social justice, there are some designated parties that they only fight for social justice, whereas apparently we fight for some only economic justice or some other kind of justice. The Constitution talks about justice, social, economic, and political. So there can be anti-caste struggle exactly. We call it anti-feudal struggle. Right. So caste is not just something scriptural. It is not just about some ritual and all something. It is not just some kind of a religious, exploitation or exclusion of people. It is backed by land relations. It is power. Caste also has to do with power relations. And we have been fighting against this asymmetrical, this completely unjust power relations, power distribution, land distribution. So we have been fighting for the oppressed poor, landless poor, powerless poor, disempowered people. So that's why we consider that we are also part and parcel of the anti-caste social justice movement. And yes, the government when it was formed, basically it was Nitish Kumar was there in NDA. There was a brief window when Nitish Kumar had crossed over to our coalition. Right. We had I think some 17 months or 18 months. So we didn't join the government because we thought that we should act some kind of a bridge between the people and the government, between the ongoing struggles on the ground and the government's agenda. So we were able to get a few things done. One is, of course, the caste survey, which everybody demanding, but then we wanted it to be part of the census. But when we realized that the Modi government is not going to conduct census, and Modi ji point blank, he told us we are not going to conduct caste. There was an all-party delegation which had met Narendra Modi under the leadership of Nitish Kumar. The BJP Bihar was also part of this delegation, and yet Narendra Modi said nothing doing, no caste census. So then only Bihar government, we thought, okay, the government on its own can probably conduct not a census but a caste survey. So the caste survey was done, a socio-economic survey was done, and when the socio-economic survey revealed the extent of poverty in Bihar, it's a 94 lakh families, almost close to 1 crore families, which is roughly, let's say, 34% of Bihar, surviving on a monthly income of less than 6,000 rupees.
Right.
And another, let's say, between 6,000 and 10,000, another, if you look at the bracket, then you get another 29%, which is roughly 2,000 of two-thirds of Bihar below 10,000 rupees a month. So this kind of poverty, and then the government made some announcement. We'll give 2 lakh rupees one-time assistance to each of these 94 lakh families. And these are the few announcements which Nitish Kumar made when he was part of our government, which was chief minister heading our government in a way. And then the third thing was we had the caste survey, and the caste survey showed the kind of proportion of the Dalits, Adivasis, extreme backward caste, other backward caste, and upper caste. So then there was an all-party consensus resolution passed in Bihar Assembly that 65% reservation should be there. Like Tamil Nadu has 69%. So the point was, how do you get 65%? High Court struck it down. So the only way out is to get it in the 9th schedule, put it in the 9th schedule, so that it is out of the judicial ambit, and people get the kind of reservation which they deserve. So these were the few takeaways from that period. Nothing has been achieved, but I think the policies have been formulated. So this is now our agenda to struggle that we need those 2 lakh rupees, which has been promised and denied. And this was no Jumla election meeting Jumla that 15 lakh rupees. This was something announced on the floor of the assembly by the chief minister. It's a promise, solemn promise made to the poor of Bihar, which has not been fulfilled. So we are fighting for it. 65% reservation, and now caste census, the government is saying we are going to conduct it nationwide. Yes, let it be done as quickly as possible. And if you are ready to conduct caste census, why? Just to get the figures? I don't think so. So if you are getting the figures, if you call it the first kind of X-ray or MRI, whatever, so every test you conduct medically, that is for treatment.
Right.
And so the treatment is, the minimum treatment is, and do away with this 50% cap. Expand reservation. Extend reservation to private sector. And it is not just about reservation. It is about representation and participation of the people. So there are a whole lot of areas in India where the Dalits, the EBCs, the other backward castes, where the minorities, they are completely almost excluded. The academia, the top levels of bureaucracy, the judiciary, nothing. So we need that. So we look at it as some kind of a tool for mobility, limited social mobility, but our journey is to social equality. So from mobility to equality, India will have to make that leap. And this can be probably just, some kind of a beginning.
But when it comes to the left, always there has been this thing that to be a part of power or not. Like it said that Jyoti Basu could have been PM in that historic movement. And also, so do you think you would have achieved more being part of the government, actually like taking up a portfolio, a ministry?
I don't think so. And in fact, now people, because first of all, the government which people wanted us to be part of, the government didn't survive. Okay. So Nitish Kumar himself went over to NDA after some time. So this was a very kind of unstable kind of a government. So if there is a really stable kind of a government, and if we have the kind of scale where we have the strength, where we can, actually do something. So we want to look at leverage our strength. So how best we can contribute. If the government is willing to do something for the people, fine. We will cooperate with the government in every possible way. In fact, I'll tell you, when Nitish Kumar became the chief minister and he formed 2 commissions, a land reform commission and an education reform commission. And we supported the 2 commissions wholeheartedly. We assisted them in every possible way, organizing public hearings, tribunals. And then the 2 commissions, they came up with reports. Wonderful reports. And in fact, they told us that these are not very radical reports. We have deliberately watered it down. so that it becomes implementable. They were hopeful that Nitish Kumar will implement those reports, but those two reports were immediately dumped completely. So we have actually, even if we are not part of the government, even if it is an NDA government where the BJP is there very much, we were not really, it is not a fetish. So if the government wants to do something in terms of land reform, in terms of educational reform, in terms of environment, in terms of health, in terms of public education, we are there. We are there. It doesn't require us to be part of the government. As part of the movement, we'll do it. So I think it's not shirking, from responsibility. It is how best you actually fulfill your responsibility. Because we know that there have been many good policies. Policies on paper are good. But if you want those policies to be actually implemented, executed on the ground, you need solid popular backing.
Right.
And what we bring to the table is that kind of a popular mobilization on the ground which secure whatever land reform has happened in India, partial land reform. Now it has been completely abandoned. It is not because of the Zamindari Abolition Act or any such act, land ceiling act. It is because of the communist movement on the ground who fought for land redistribution and justice. So that's why I think this is unfair actually to say that we are not willing to take responsibility. We are holding the government accountable.
Okay.
We ourselves are accountable for whatever we do. If anything, because we are a party of the movement. So as a movement, whatever promises we make, whatever agenda we carry forward, short term, middle term, medium term, long term, we are committed to that. So I think it's not, and a day will come.
Right.
And in fact, the CPM, they didn't agree to lend Jyoti Basu for the Prime Minister's post. I call it lending somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, because he didn't really have the power.
Yeah.
So they refused to do that in their collective wisdom. But they ran the government for 34 years. They ran the government in Tripura for so many years. They're still running the government in Kerala. So you don't say that they actually run away, shy away.
No.
You, of course, criticize the left for whatever they are doing or not doing.
Yeah.
Omissions and commissions. Yes.
Last two questions. So one is that Bihar will again see elections soon, and a lot of atmosphere is being created. So what is your approach to these elections? Will there be larger unity there again? Will there be that kind of strategy, or will you approach it individually as a...
No. We are already part of a coalition.
Uh-huh.
The coalition, of course, I say the India coalition.
Yeah.
I mean, people are at times a bit doubtful whether India actually is going or not. So I think India coalition is very much there. There are some people who say that India was a one election kind of a wonder.
Yeah.
It was not.
Okay.
So it is the need of the hour. We need a coalition.
Yeah.
And as I said, we need a multi-layered kind of a coalition. So in Bihar, the coalition which we had, that predates India. That was a 5-party coalition. In Bihar, they call it a Mahagathbandhan,
Right.
Grand Alliance. So that still exists. And in fact, that has become slightly bigger.
Okay.
There is a party called VIP, Vikashshil Insan Party, which was not there with us in the 2020 election, but which was part of the Lok Sabha thing. So I think we will have slightly larger coalition in place,
Right.
but the coalition will be very much intact. And I am hopeful that people, make these two references. One is Maharashtra,
Yeah.
where in the Lok Sabha, the BJP, the NDA, I think the India had a bigger tally than...
Yes. 30.
And then when the assembly elections happened, the NDA again regained power.
Yeah.
They are not regained, they actually continue to be in power. And the other example is Jharkhand, where the NDA got the majority in Lok Sabha, but once again, the people stood their ground and rejected the BJP in the assembly election.
Right.
So my hope and belief is that Bihar, actually Maharashtra is quite distant,
Right.
and Jharkhand is the neighboring state.
Okay.
So Bihar will go the Jharkhand way.
Okay.
And we are hopeful and we are trying our best. For example, Modi, after, let's say, Pahalgam, he has already addressed 2 rallies.
Right.
When people were expecting him to visit Pahalgam, visit Kashmir, attend all-party meeting in Delhi, he was there addressing an election rally in Madhubani.
Right.
On 30th May, he was an election rally in Karakat, Bikramganj, which is the Lok Sabha constituency which our comrade represents, Comrade Rajaram Singh. So Modi is there, but I can already see that the response from the people is very cold.
Okay.
Because the people of Bihar, I think they know
Right.
It is not just about this election. Here is a government which has been in power for 20 long years,
Right.
and it was initially a single engine government as long as there was UPA in central power. But from 2014 onward, it's a double engine government.
Yeah.
And so Bihar actually is having double disaster, double engine driven
Right.
disaster in Bihar. So people are demanding, answers. They're holding the government accountable. So I'm hopeful that they're a very meaningful kind of agenda
Right.
revolving around the issues that matter most to the people: poverty, unemployment,
Right.
complete collapse of the education system, healthcare system. These are two things which no privates can deliver in Bihar. So the government will have to come up and take the lead in this. And then without land reform, there can be no social justice effectively. So for social justice to become effective, you need land reform, you need jobs, you need education. And not just reservation alone can't do it. And of course, reservation itself is now at stake. We need greater reservation, 65%, as I say. So there is a very much an agenda in place.
Okay.
And I'm hopeful that this time the India coalition, there is greater coordination.
Right.
There have already been a series of meetings. There is a coordination committee in place. There are subcommittees in place to write the manifesto, to plan the campaign.
Right.
So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to deliver in Bihar.
My last question. Considering larger left unity, you several times while talking to us right now emphasize on the word fascism, and we saw CPM debating about using the word fascism or neo-authoritarianism, Savarna corporatism, I think the other word was. So, and your party was one of the one who openly wrote a letter condemning or criticizing this discussion or this perspective. So, how do you see the CPM as the largest party within the left unity? And going ahead, do you see the left parties coordinating much more, or how will the left unity work?
Right. See, basically, it was not a letter to CPM or any such thing. Basically, because CPM is still the biggest party, biggest communist party. And if we do not say, then whatever CPM will say, that will be seen as the Indian left's position. Right. And we don't certainly want that. So, because here, this is a major area. We didn't know that this will be a major area of difference. We thought after 2014, there will be more room for unity, need for unity, because we are faced with fascism. But then they, because of maybe the kind of situations that they are placed in Bengal, in Kerala, where they do not look at the BJP as their immediate principal enemy, for whatever reason, I think there is a gap. The way we perceive this threat, and the way we are fighting this threat, and the way the CPM looks at the whole thing. So there is definitely a lot of difference. So that's why we had to make it very clear that this is how we look at it. Now, of course, this is like fascism is some kind of an elephant in the room. Okay, many people don't talk about it. And when you talk about the metaphor of elephant, there is also this other thing, 6 blind men and the elephant. So you look at the elephant from, you say, look at the ears, the trunk, the legs, but you don't really know the elephant, that this is an elephant. So likewise, fascism in India, which means complete suppression of democracy, complete negation of democracy. But some people may believe that since the constitution is still in place, since elections are still happening, so why the hurry? Why, okay, little. So that is one thing. That is a lesson that we have learned from fascism, that when it starts creeping in, when it becomes, you never know. Suddenly it will be like a whirlwind, like a storm, it will demolish everything. And in India, it has been 100-year-long opera, fascist opera since 1925 onward. And it is again, there is this RSS. Because otherwise, in Germany, it was Hitler. When Hitler perished, people thought fascism has perished for some time because there was no supply line. Here, there is a supply line. Modi, Amit Shah, Yogi, one after another. So here is the RSS in place. So this is why in Indian fascism, I think we need, of course, it is Indian fascism. Nobody is comparing it with Germany. Nobody thinks that we need not be so Eurocentric. So we need to understand this is fascism in India and the Indian particularities of this fascism. And as I said, Of course, if we are able to appreciate the fascist danger, acknowledge it, and if we are ready to, agree on the how we need to sort of intensify the resistance, then there'll be wider left unity. That's why left unity may take some time, but we do not make fascism, acknowledgement of fascism, a precondition for a larger anti-fascist unity. So many of the people who are part of the India coalition, many of the struggles which are ongoing, as I said, they may not know the whole elephant. If they're fighting against the ears of the elephant, fighting against the trunk of the elephant, fighting against the legs of the elephant, fine. So anybody who is opposing fascism in practice,
Right.
To whatever extent, in whatever manner, they're welcome.
Right.
So when we talk about broad-based unity, so it doesn't mean that everybody will have to be on the same wavelength, on the same platform, having the same approach to fascism. No, we cannot demand that. So that's why I think even if CPM doesn't agree, CPM will be CPM, and we will continue to appreciate whatever they are doing.
Right.
We'll be having left unity. We'll be having larger opposition unity. We'll continue with that.
Thank you for the detailed dialogue,
Thank you.
Dipankarji. So this was Dipankar Bhattacharya, the General Secretary of the CPIML. And these conversations are possible because we are independent. We are dependent on our readers and our viewers. We are not corporate funded. We are not politically funded. So which is why we can have these dialogues. Otherwise, there are a lot of filters that come with associating with the corporate funds. So please help us by using the link in the description to help us continue our journalism. Like this video, share it with your friends, share it on your social media, and subscribe to Indie Journal and keep watching Indie Journal.